I recall playing this indie gem of a game back in 2016, during its initial release on my underpowered school laptop. Even though the story and visuals captivated me for the time, I don't think I truly grasped what was at stake among Henry and Delilah in Firewatch. Much like my underpowered computer at the time, my adolescent mind couldn't really process certain points I feel that the writers were trying to make throughout Firewatch's brief but powerful story. I would also like to preface, before we get further into this, that this video will include important plot points and spoilers, so tread at your own risk. I would wholly recommend jumping into this game first before watching, but it's still your life at the end of the day, bud.
Good night. Welcome to the job.
Now, with some years and perspective behind me, I recently decided to give Firewatch another go, and man, it feels like I'm watching it in a whole new light. I must say, even after 8 years since its release, spanning an entire video game generation in between, it still is a visual treat for me to explore and wander through the Shoshone National Forest as Henry.
Henry, having a nice afternoon?
Firewatch achieves this timelessness through its vibrant art style and carefully curated music, still impressing me every year I find myself returning to this title. The color palette, rich in warm oranges, deep purples, and cool blues, gives the forest an unreal, almost dreamlike quality, reminiscent of games like Outer Wilds. The environment feels both grounded in reality and slightly otherworldly, adding to its sense of isolation and immersion. This stylistic choice ensures the game remains visually stunning even years after release, a feat many graphically intense games struggle to maintain and very few have achieved. The music, composed by Chris Remo, is also subtle but poignant, adding layers of emotional resonance at key moments without overpowering the gameplay, and giving space to appreciate the Foley work done for the sounds of nature. The ambient soundtrack also serves as a gentle companion to Henry's journey, echoing his solitude and introspection with melancholic guitar strums and the use of ambient synths. This seamless fusion of visuals and sound creates an atmosphere that is stunning as well as haunting, magnifying the emotional weight of every interaction and decision, and even further developing the player's connection to Henry's story. So beyond its unique art and music, Firewatch also takes an interesting approach on its navigation system, which is one of the first friction points many players, including myself, encounter in Firewatch. In most modern games, you'd expect an active minimap or waypoint system, especially in a title that revolves around exploring a vast, dense forest, but Firewatch doesn't offer that. Instead, it gives you a map and a compass, forcing you to engage with the environment on its terms. I remember my initial frustration during that playthrough, constantly getting lost, not knowing exactly where I was heading. It felt like a deliberate inconvenience, but looking at it now, it's clear that this design decision wasn't an oversight. It was completely intentional. It forces the player to slow down and experience the world more deliberately. This system in place creates a more intimate relationship with the environment. You're not just rushing from objective to objective like most games, mindlessly following a marker on the screen. Instead, you're scanning the horizon, you're listening to the sounds of the forest, and even paying attention to the landmarks around you to come back to. Firewatch wants you to feel that isolation, to feel what Henry feels. Being in the middle of nowhere, left to your own devices, with only a distant voice on the radio for comfort. What especially stands out to me after revisiting Firewatch is how deeply intertwined the game's mechanics are with the emotional journey of its characters. The isolation you feel as a player wandering through the vast wilderness is a direct reflection of what is going on in Henry's mind. Campo Santo seamlessly achieved this even in a small amount of time given for gameplay. I think I completed this in less than 5 hours. He's not just lost in the Shoshone National Forest, he's lost in life. He's lost in terms of what the next step would be while coming to terms with his wife's illness, and trying to escape a painful past he hasn't fully confronted. His decision to take on the role of a fire lookout seems like a way to avoid dealing with his wife's illness and the guilt that comes with it. The slow pacing of the game and the reliance on a physical map and compass all contribute to this sense of isolation and aimlessness. It's definitely a deliberate choice by the game's designers to put you in Henry's shoes, not just physically, but on a very intimate, emotional level.
Fucking kids.
Then we get to Delilah, Henry's only human connection in the game, whose voice over the radio initially feels like a lifeline at times. On my first playthrough, I saw her as a charismatic enigma, charming, witty, and seemingly the perfect counterpart to Henry's more subdued nature.
I know this will be tough.
But with the benefit of hindsight, I've come to see Delilah as more of a walking red flag now. She deflects serious conversations, avoids taking responsibility for her own actions, and ultimately keeps Henry at an arm's length when things begin to get serious. Her charm masks deeper flaws, and it becomes clear that she's running from her own problems just as much as Henry is.
Yeah, hold on.
The shift in perspective makes the game's ending, though frustrating at first, feel almost inevitable. Henry not meeting Delilah and not pursuing a life with her was the right choice in my eyes, at least.
Some guy.
They're both far too broken and entrenched in their own patterns of escape to offer each other the resolution they really need.
They're here.
As much as the player might want a neat, romantic conclusion, Firewatch leaves us with something more truthful. Two individuals who must confront their own struggles alone. In the end, the forest itself serves as a temporary refuge, a place to pause but not to remain. A retreat for escapism, not resolution. By the end, players may feel a mix of emotional shock and frustration, much like I have. Especially as the story builds up a tense relationship without a conventional payoff. This sense of unfinished business and lingering ambiguity adds to the game's emotional weight, as it leaves the player haunted by questions and possibilities, making Firewatch a frustrating masterpiece.